Alright guys, so I've got a John Deere 960M zero turn with the fx921v engine, and they tell me the difference in the 921v and the fx1000v is the throttle shaft and the carburetor, and that you can cut the shaft on this 921 so that the butterflies in the carburetor will open all the way up instead of partially open, and get 35 horsepower out of it instead of 31. And so what I want to do is I'm going to start this thing up. I've got a little old tachometer set up right here on the plug wire, and I want to see what the RPM is at wide open throttle. That way when I mess with this, I'll know, I'm not going over that or whatever. I'm still in that range. It should be 3600. I've never checked it. But anyway, that's what I want to do for step one. And then we're going to pull this apart and see if we can tell about the butterflies in the carburetor, and then if we can modify this throttle shaft, or if that's going to be too much work. But there's the throttle shaft right there, and supposedly you can cut this down so that it opens further, and you have to adjust the governor down there to allow it to open all the way up. So I'm probably going to pull this shroud off and get in here and check this out. So I've read this on the internet, and I've seen a couple of videos on some different engines, different Kawasaki engines, and got an idea, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know how exactly this is going to go, but I didn't see a video specifically on this particular engine. It was on smaller engines, but we're about to find out. Stay tuned. All right guys, this is an idle. That says 2-stroke 1-cylinder, but I think that's correct as far as the RPM. Rip it wide open here and we'll see. Alright, so that appears to be the correct RPM reading right there, as you can see. And so we just need to make sure that after we get through messing with this, that those numbers are pretty close to the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 bolts out here on each side, pull the shield off so we can get in here and see a little more about what's happening. Alright guys, I'm going to pull these 4 bolts right here off of the intake, and this hose clamp here off this Donaldson air filter. And that will allow this to come down, and then we take a look in here. I'm not 100% sure on that governor shaft, what I read, because it looks like that thing's slotted there, the best I can tell. Like that may not be adjustable, but I can't really tell. Some people didn't say anything about you had to adjust it, but one thing I read said you did, so I'm not exactly sure there. Gotta figure out how to adjust the RPM on the thing too. I don't know. Let me get this off and we can tell a little more about it maybe. Alright guys, so as you can see right here, that is the throttle shaft right there where you see that screw right here, and it is wide open. But if you look inside, of the carburetor in there. This first butterfly is your choke. Look way down in there and you can see that the butterflies on that second set in there, that's your throttle, are only about a quarter of a way open. And that's the difference between this being a 31 and the 35 opens them all the way. I don't know if you can see down in there that well or not. Maybe you can. Yeah, I think you can probably pick that up on the left one there. You can see the right one down in there now. They're only about a quarter of the way open. So what I got to figure out is how to make that open all the way up. You can order a 1000 throttle shaft that doesn't have this tang, I guess, that lets it open all the way, or you can adjust that tang by cutting it off, which is probably what we're going to do, since I don't have one. But I need to figure out about the governor shaft, if the governor adjustment would allow this to come down further. I think it's going to need some adjustment here, in my opinion, because it don't feel like there's much tension right there where it sits on that stop. So I think we're going to have to adjust this over here somehow to make this where it will pull that all the way down whenever I do cut that off. So let me look at this a little bit more. Alright guys, so I'm not 100% sure, but I've looked at this for a little bit, and I think all we got to do is trim that shaft right there where that stop is at, right here. And this shaft right here, the actual governor shaft, is slotted, got a notch in it, and so it cannot adjust there. So the only other adjustment I see is right here. So it looks like we just loosen this bolt up and then pull this outside arm down so that it opens the butterflies in there this way more till they're wide open, and then tighten this bolt back up. That's what it looks like to me, the best I can tell anyway, because that is wide open all the way twisted this way. So if you loosen this bolt up, then that will allow this arm to come down more, opening this wide open after we trim this stop off. So I'm going to have to close this throttle up here. Well, I guess the throttle was closed. Open the throttle up and see if I still come to the same conclusion. See, nothing is moving now. I got the throttle. So it's trying to pull that down. Well, we may not have to adjust anything then. If I got that throttle wide open. It does have tension on it now. So I believe that that thing will come on open after I didn't have the throttle wide open. That was the problem. So I think all I got to do is trim that throttle shaft, and this thing should open wide open because it's got plenty of pressure on it right there. And I got the throttle on the mower wide open. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to hold this up after I put the throttle back down over there in the low position. Figure out how to hold this up and trim that down with a die grinder or something I can get in there with, maybe. And we can get this to open wide open. And I think that's all we'll have to do. I think everything else is going to be fine. Let me get a die grinder over there and figure out how I can get in here and trim that or something. I may have to take this throttle plate here off or something. Let me study that a minute. Alright guys, I don't know if you're going to be able to get in here tight enough to see or not with me still have room, but I got a little carbide burr on this die grinder right here, and I'm going to hook this thing up and open this up with my hand here, get in here like this, and trim this thing down until I'm able to get the butterflies and the carburetor to open all the way up. That's what I'm going to do. I need to adjust the air pressure on this thing some. Hang on. Alright, try that again. I had that compressor set to 175 psi where I had this plugged in. I set it to the one for 120 now. It should work better. Can't hold the thing very well. Go quite a bit more. It appears that they made this hole in the shaft so you could not do what I'm trying to do here, because it doesn't leave much room for the thing. It goes too far because the hole, the way it's done. So that's not ideal. So the 1000 shaft doesn't have the hole there, so it's a little bit more difficult here on this one to get it to work. So I may have to pull this off and pull that shaft out and build it up where that hole is at with weld, and then grind it back flat to get that satisfactorily done, because I don't want it to hang wide open. Let's see if the throttle, when I open the throttle wide open, if it goes wide open here. Not quite. So I am going to have to adjust. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to have to adjust this bolt like I talked about there to get this to open on down. Get that extension over here. I think I'll do this. This should allow this to pull down like so. Butterflies are wide open now. I don't know, that throttle shaft may be okay right there. I just don't want it to get hung, you know. But it seems like the outside right there is catching it. So I think I just pull this down like that. And this is wide open over here. Should be able to tighten this back up, and that should be correct. So I've got the throttle wide open, I've got the butterflies wide open. So tighten this bolt back down should do the trick. See, it's got it pulled down there now, wide open, where that's at. And it appears that the butterflies are wide open. So, we get the light and bring you guys around here so you can see, and then we're gonna try that. Alright, so maybe you guys can see up in here now that the throttle plates on the throttle shaft there are in fact wide open now. So if you don't want to put a Dremel on that throttle shaft like that, like I did, or a die grinder, your best bet is to order the throttle shaft. They're not but like 40 bucks for the throttle shaft. I don't know the part number, so I think you can Google it. Just fx1000v throttle shaft should be what you need, and you will not have to do that, but you'll have to pull the carburetor off and loosen the screws up that's in the butterflies back there and the linkage and stuff, and pull that shaft completely out, put the new shaft in, and bolt it back up, you should be good to go. So all I did on this to get this to work is Dremel that out where the throttle shaft will open all the way up, and loosen this bolt right here and pull this down while the throttle is wide open on the mower, as you see right there, and pull this down to where the throttle on the mower is wide open. It's got the governor pull wide open, and then pull this linkage down to get the additional travel on your butterfly right there against the stop you just trimmed, and then tighten this bolt back up is all I've done. So I'm going to put this thing back together and we're going to try it, see what happens. All right, so just stuck this back up here. There's 2 bolts, 2 nuts on these studs. Snug them up equally. These hold the carburetor and this intake on. You got a little wire right here, a little ground wire on this particular setup. And then we're going to tighten our clamp back up here on this. And then we're going to crank this thing up and see what happens. I think as long as it don't over rib, it should be good. And these don't tighten very tight. I do have a torque wrench, but I'm not going to get it. I don't have one handy, I put it that way. Sometimes you use what you got in your hand. Kind of like everything's a hammer when that's when you got in your hand. What you got in your hand. Alright, so let's start this thing back up. Let's see what happens. I'm going to first throttle it down and see if this moves. It should. We'll see what happens. Idle. I'm going to make a small adjustment on this high speed and the idle, I think. I may leave the idle alone. It's just a touch higher than what it was. I don't know, I think I'm going to adjust it. is where you set your throttle linkage at right here. I think that's going to be the low and the upper one's the high. I don't know which way is what. We're about to find out though. That's the low speed, but it's the, I was going the wrong way is what I was trying to say. Picking up interference off that engine, I think, is affecting. That's about where we were initially. So I'm gonna rivet it wide open and then we'll adjust that part. 1500 at idle and about 3700 wide open throttle. If you watch right here when I give it throttle, you can see the butterflies go wide open and the governor catches it. So whenever you're getting some thick, heavy grass, the governor will kick in and open them butterflies wide open. All right, guys, well, that's a wrap. Got everything put back together. Everything seems to work fine. And I don't know if this is the correct way to do this. You probably shouldn't do this, but it's what I did, so I figured I'd share it. Like I say, most people will swap the throttle shaft to do this, and I didn't have a throttle shaft, didn't want to go through the trouble of pulling that all apart just to swap it when I could take a die grinder to it and get the same results, opening the butterflies wide open. But it should be criminal to build something like this, that the only difference is the butterflies not opening all the way up to get the full potential out of the engine. It's like running a race car with a throttle stop on it. I mean, it doesn't make much sense, just so they could charge you more money for the engine, which on one hand is fine, but on the other hand, because this is John Deere, this is 960M, this was the top of the line M model and the top of the line engine. You couldn't get the 1000 engine on the M series Deere. You had to go to a 970R when I bought this. This is a 21 model and mower. I didn't want to go to a 970R because instead of having the foot pedal deck lift right here, you got buttons up here and a hydraulic cylinder that raises your deck up. It was an extra couple $1,000s. And then you have an additional maintenance item that the cylinders go bad over time and start leaking. The buttons in the handlebars go bad and you have problems with them. And it just wasn't something that I needed. So why would I pay more money, a couple $1,000s more money for something that's less reliable? Most reliability you'll ever get is a foot pedal deck lift, unless you got bad knees or a female or somebody with weaker legs, an older person, you know, that has a problem mashing that, because it is pretty hard to mash to raise your deck up. I see no need to have the hydraulic deck lift. It's just extra money, something else to go wrong. So what I wanted was really the 35 horsepower engine on this mower, which you cannot buy from John Deere, at least then. I think now they had a 965M or something, or maybe it's 970 or 75M or something. Anyway, it's a little more than what they had in 2021. They got a fuel injected version of this. So that's the reason for this. We wanted to make this a 35 horse because that's what I really wanted to start with. And I was going to do this several years ago, and the mower was still under warranty. I didn't really want to mess with it. The mower's out of warranty. It's 4 years old. It's only got 50 hours on it. I just cut my own yard with it. And but anyway, I want to go ahead and do this while I had a little bit of time and see what the results are. I'm thinking it's going to be quite a bit better and more responsive when you hit a thick patch of grass, that this thing will go ahead and the governor will go ahead and open that throttle shaft wide open and catch it. And I increased the RPMs just a little bit. I think the specs on these are 3,600 RPM plus or minus 100 RPM. I want to go a little bit on the high side, and that way whenever you engage your blades, that's going to bring it down about 50 RPM And then when you're cutting the grass, the governor's got to keep it there. Well, it gives just a little bit more RPM, you know, when it starts lugging or whatever, that the governor will go ahead and catch it a little faster, in my opinion. Everybody likes to do things different, I guess, but that was my thought process, the reason I did it the way I did. Idle RPM is set around 1500, and so it should be good, ready to go and cut the grass now. I've got to change the blades on the thing, but I'm not going to make a video on that. But I want to do a video on this right here because I couldn't find any information on it, and I'm not 100% sure that this information is what you should be doing or is 100% correct, but it's the best of my knowledge of what I could figure out and the way I could figure out how to do it. So do so at your own risk, I suppose, if you chose to do something like this. All right, guys, so I wanted to add this in the video. I went and tried this thing out. I cut about 3 acres of grass, put some new blades on it, and then went and cut. I used some 810 blades off of Amazon. They were just a normal high lift blade. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. You can see a little green paint on the end of them still. But the thing cut really well. You can tell the upgrade in the power. It don't bog down as easy. The grass I cut hadn't been cut in about a month, and it was about knee high, and old tough Bahia grass that's tough to cut anyway. But the thing cut well, and it rained about 15 minutes really heavy before I cut. The rain was supposed to come a little later and last a little longer, but the rain showed up before I got there to cut, and then dissipated and didn't rain again. So it was a little wet, and some of the stuff that was real thick in one spot, I did have a little bit of clumping issue. I run with my chute up so it blows the grass clippings out. Did have a little bit of clumping issue in one area. Had to kind of go slow, and a couple times I had to stop and you know, back up and let the deck clear out. But other than that, it cut pretty good. I was pretty happy with it and impressed with it, the way it cut. And so I think that's a pretty easy upgrade and pretty good upgrade to do if you like to tinker with stuff like that. It's out of warranty and you don't care about you know, the consequences or whatever. But I guess I need to get me some 35 horse decals now, but I probably won't because the 31 decal is already blew off. But yeah, it did pretty well. So I think that was a worthwhile upgrade that didn't take very long to do. And now that I know how to do it, I could have done it a little faster because I wasn't sure on that governor part. But I think, you know, if I had to do one again, I could probably do it a little bit faster on that. But it didn't take too awful long to cut that 3 acres. I didn't time it or anything. Didn't film it because I wasn't sure if the rain was going to come back. Didn't think to grab a camera and set that up or anything, but just have to take my word for it that it cut pretty good, I suppose. And it seemed like a noticeable difference to me.